Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending on this little blustery Monday morning. My name's Jeff Inman, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research and Faculty here at the Katz Graduate School of Business. This is a relatively new space for us. We just converted the library this last fall. Still has that new car smell, so please don't spill any of your drinks on it. So this is the name of this conference officially is I wrote it down here, the Integrative Conference on Technology, Social Media, and Behavioral Health. We've affectionately come to call it health tech. So when I came on board a little bit after the program had been approved, conference had been approved, and my colleague Andrew Stephen was one of the initiators, and I want to just thank my collaborators on this conference before we get too far along. Bruce Rollman from the medical school, Laura Burke from nursing, and Mike Spring from the School of Information Sciences. And Sakina Washington, where are you? Sakina, she's done a great job putting everything together. I was just flipping through the initial proposal and that we sent to the Provost's office. Again, where's Marc Redfern? Where's he? Marc here? Marc, thanks to Marc and the Provost's office for providing funding for the conference. So the initial proposal called for a small pilot conference, which is this. So things got a little bit out of hand on that, but it's great that there's such a overwhelming outpouring of interest in this topic. So the general idea here is that this conference and then a bigger one we're going to have in November that we'll tell you about later on is to basically foster collaborations and conversations and networking in the general space of innovations in and commercialization of in healthcare. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to my co-chair, Bruce Rollman from the medical school. Thank you and welcome. Have a good time today.
Jeff, not so fast. Summer is coming up. I want to thank you all for your collaboration together.
One of our own hats.
They charged me.
Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is our first behavioral health conference, and I'm tasked to review the program. But I thought, the program is in front of you, and you can take a look at it. I'm really delighted by the speakers that we've put together, but this is really the overview of the day and our goals. It's really about networking, bridging silos across the various schools that you saw, sharing ideas, creating new ideas, and of course making new friends today. This is really simple. This is really our goals for today. I was inspired, and this is a quote from our application to Dr. Redfern's office. I had read this book called The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. He had also written the Steve Jobs book and a book about Einstein and Franklin and so on. And I was really intrigued by this quote from Ada Lovelace, who's been attributed to be the first computer programmer, about what is imagination. And it's a combining faculty that helps bring together things, facts, ideas, conceptions in new, original, endless, and ever-varying combinations. And this is really what is creativity and innovation is about. It's very hard to think of something totally new. Most things come from other things and recombines in unique ways. So over the weekend, I was reading my issue of the Harvard Business Review. This is a business school after all. And there were two short articles I'd like to summarize for the group here that I think will help people get the most out of today. The first article was in the Managing Yourself column about learning to love networking. And there were four things that the authors had recommended. One is to focus on learning. Two is to identify common interests, think what you can give, and also to find a higher purpose. So the first is the promotion mindset about focusing on learning. Some people come to meetings like this and others with the ideas, well, I really don't want to leave my hotel room. I really just want to come because I have to be here. But this is about promotion, and not self-promotion, but promotion about an opportunity for discovery, for learning new things, for excitement and curiosity. And I thought, wow, yeah, this is what networking is about. And you never know when you might meet someone today, and you never know how it might help you next week, next month, or next year. Another thing is to think about when you're meeting new people today is how do your goals and interests align? What are your shared interests? So Sakina and I had designed the name tags to be large. You could see people's names, you could see people's bios in the book, and also the names of the pre-registered conference attendees. So ask these kind of questions, how your goals and interests align with the people that you're meeting. And the article, the Harvard Business Review article, talked about people who have potent networks. And people with potent networks tend to connect to diverse others. So they're not only connecting to people from their business unit or department or division, but they're going across schools. Then the next idea is to think of, from the article is to think about what you can give. So if you're a senior person, certainly wise advice and mentorship. There's experience and access to your own networking community. But it doesn't stop there. If you're a junior person, you may have knowledge. So for example, this is a technology conference. And I've been very impressed when I've talked to people who are giving presentations today and demoing about some of the technologies that they're developing. To me, that's new knowledge. I don't know how to program like this. Also, if you're a junior person, expressing gratitude, and also that there's a way of enhancing the reputation of your seniors, you know, by having these kind of collaborations. So it's really a give and take when you're networking. And finally is about finding a higher purpose. So when you're networking, it's not just about you, but about how might this, and this is the business speak because it's Harvard Business Review, but how networking could help your clients, how it supports your group, and how it's visibility for your company. Now, whether it's your division, your department, your school, or if you're at an outside meeting, the University of Pittsburgh, you know, this is all, we represent so many different groups. The second article from the Harvard Business Review was about this fellow who's a CEO of Upwork, Stefan Cazarel. He's an introverted engineer, and he talked about some of his goals. How do I get out of my shell? So when he goes to meetings, because he's an engineer, he's very quantitative, so he sets goals for himself. One is to talk to at least 30 people. Two is to get at least 10 business cards and arrange 5 follow-up meetings. And maybe for people in this audience, it might be 5 follow-up emails and those kind of things too. But think about, you know, if you're an introverted, if this doesn't come natural to you, we've developed the agenda and the location so that it maximizes friction between people. Not in a bad way, in a good way. The way the coffee bars are set up, the way the food is set up, and the registration table, and all, that people can have those kind of chance interactions and hopefully discover new things. So a couple final thoughts on the agenda. I don't know if this is going to work right, but Sakina and I were talking about this on Friday, and I don't know how many people like musicals. Let's see if we can get this to play or not. But I thought about how this is something familiar.
Something peculiar, something for everyone.
Comedy tonight. So that's our kind of our agenda and our modus operandi when we were developing this. If you're a Stephen Sondheim fan, I'll save the rest. You can find this on YouTube or anywhere else. Thank you very much, and it's now our distinct pleasure to welcome our Chancellor, Dr. Patrick Gallagher.
How do you follow a musical introduction? Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. I just want to share a few thoughts of welcome. First of all, congratulations on your inaugural pilot, small scale. I can't wait to see the real one, given the energy that's here. This is exciting for a lot of reasons, and I thought I would share just a few thoughts about this push on innovation, and one aspect of it that I think is exciting and at the same time a lot of work. So a lot of people have asked, you know, why is the university pushing so hard on innovation and creativity? Why is this a thrust? After all, we've got a profound mission. It's vitally important. We're succeeding on so many fronts in teaching and research. And you know, my answer is that it's because it can augment those things. It's not a change of course, but it's an augmentation of that. And what do I mean by that? There are forms of creative activity, including technological innovation, social innovation, business innovation, that transcend the boundaries that we often have within any institution, that are bigger than our research programs, bigger than the PI, I like to say, maybe even bigger than a department. It can be bigger than a field of study. And they require us to assemble groups, teams of people that cut across those boundaries. And in that process of organizing ourselves, we find something really magical, which is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That there's an intense creativity that happens when you begin to mix people with different perspectives coming from those different organizations, those different perspectives, those different disciplines. And it's exciting, and it's very fruitful, and it's tough. Because the other aspect of a partnership is that you don't forget what you are. So it's not like becoming a corporation where this group goes off and becomes something brand new. You never forget if you're a faculty member that you're a faculty member, or if you're a business person that you're a business person. And it is actually in that fact that you are working together from the perspective of what you are that makes this both so productive and so difficult at the same time. And one of the challenges that we face, and the reason we put this in front of the university community, is how can we facilitate that tough team sport of working together? What are the things we can do to help drop that, reduce the unnecessary friction and leave behind the creative friction? What are the things we can do to support, champion, and create the conditions that make this so possible? It was interesting. Yesterday, of course, was the commencement for the university, and our guest speaker, our commencement speaker, was Vint Cerf, who many of you know as one of the fathers of the internet. And Vint and I were talking about that time when he was creating the TCP/IP protocols, and he was saying how it was interesting because it was a very broad, very diverse, and interdisciplinary activity. And we were talking about how do you assemble people to work together when you're cutting across institutions. And one of the examples he gave was actually in health tech. And he said, in his experience, it all hinged on asking the right questions. That was the most powerful way to bring people together. And he said that right question actually has two forms. One is why. Why is something important? And if you think about this conference, you're addressing a very important why. You're talking about the human condition, our health, our wellness, and our well-being. And he said the other profound thing that you can ask a group is how. How do we do it? What is the innovative tech? That's the one that brings often the technology, the collaboration, the business innovation. And so what I wish for you today is that a plethora of good questions, whether it's why or how, and all the richness that can come from those interactions and that energy. And one of the reasons you have to feel so good after having that creative side is it can sustain you then through the hard work of assembling working partnerships that stay together through the struggle of turning an idea into something that can have impact in the world around us. So we need both. We need that that high energy creative engagement, and we also need the machinery of engagement that keeps us together and sustains us through that. So with that, let me wish you all the best, and it sounds like an exciting. I want to congratulate you again, Jeff and Bruce, and have a great workshop, everyone. Let me,
Our number one fan.
And it's just in time because, the Pitt script is going to make this collector's item here in a couple of weeks. That's great. I'm not going to show you my basketball shooting either. It's worse than my singing. I want to introduce our Dean, Assad. Arjang has not been here that long, but is already making a huge impact on the tone that he's setting for Katz at CBA. And one of the hallmarks of his leadership that I really appreciate is this partnership. Arjang has understood in the most profound way that a business school has to be part of the business community. And it should be a hub for those kind of interactions, not just for itself, but for the rest of the university. And I think the fact that we're here together in this place with your leadership, creating this network, is a testament to what you stand for. So, Arjang?
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here to welcome you. I'm delighted to do that. And before I begin, I'd like to thank Chancellor Gallagher for his presence, his remarks, and more importantly, for what he has done in the area of innovation himself. He's clearly the champion of innovation at Pitt. And with that, as he just mentioned to you, goes a call for different units to come together and collaborate. And that's the real challenge and also what we're all about today. Clearly, innovation and collaboration are at the very heart of today's conference, but also as we think about medical devices, mobile devices, social media, things that have transformed every aspect of how healthcare might be delivered in the future. And this being a management school, we also think of all the process innovations that need to take place in addition to product innovations. It's really the best time to talk about innovation in healthcare. And so this is really a wonderful opportunity for us to host this year. We're very glad to do so. And I want to congratulate all the organizers. I won't mention all the names, but who made this happen. I also want to thank the people who are gathered here today who've been made this conference rich through their presence. This includes distinguished faculty from Pitt, various schools, including School of Medicine, Nursing, Information Systems, Business, and also from Carnegie Mellon University, members of UPMC, UPMC Enterprise, and the Jewish Healthcare Foundation, a variety of health technology startups who are here, and finally, some of the Pittsburgh best incubator organizations. These are all the people who make innovation possible through the networking that Bruce mentioned. Now, for us, we're extremely proud to host the conference, not only because of its own subject matter, but because of the strategic commitment that the Katz School has made to healthcare. Our higher cause is to make healthcare a key objective for us to pursue, to become one of the centers of how management interfaces with healthcare delivery and operations. And in that regard, I want to thank Chancellor Gallagher's direct support of that and his advice to me in that matter. So thanks, Pat. A few things that we've thought about as to why this is the right thing to do is, of course, very familiar to this audience. We have the long-standing prominence of health sciences at the University of Pittsburgh. The reputation of Pitt in that area is beyond, it's nationwide, and anybody I talk to, I can say this because I'm a newcomer, and every time I say I'm at Pitt, that's the first thing that comes up. The healthcare is clearly a shining jewel. And so is the prominence of our healthcare delivery systems, care systems in the region, such as UPMC. And finally, we have the increased attention to healthcare nationwide, whether it's in business schools, in technology areas. Everybody's now thinking about healthcare and the next set of business models that will emerge for doing healthcare. What we've done in this area just in the last year is collaboration with other schools within Pitt. We have a Master in Pharmacy Business Administration that has just been launched, and in fact, we taught the first courses in there just last semester. We have an MBA MS in Public Health with the School of Public Health that just got approved. I have the letter today, actually. An MBA MS in Social Work that is in progress. And finally, we've done other things. Carrie Liana, for example, has run for 9 years a very successful physicians leadership program with UPMC, where all faculty collaborate with the executive staff of UPMC in delivering courses together in executive mode. And we're going to build on that. And our next big initiative is actually to have a Katz executive MBA in healthcare. So that's really the eyes on the prize now in that regard for the school, is to make that a real success. We have, we know it's essential. We know that the people that we're targeting are actually ripe for getting this kind of information. And what we want to do is create a premier program that delivers exactly the kind of customized knowledge that needs to come at the interface of management and healthcare to those people. So we'll advertise this more, and I just wanted to kind of give you a preview of something that is very much on our minds as faculty of the Katz School. These academic programs, together with our world-class research focus, will help position the university and also Pitt Business as a global leader in healthcare, bringing all the various strands together, and we want to play our part in that. In closing, I want to thank you for your presence here, for the new ideas, for your engagement, and make this talk real short because I'm anxious to hearing and listening for the rest of the day. Thank you for being here.
And so our first keynote speaker is Marc Malandro from the Innovation Institute at University of Pittsburgh. So Marc, let's get you mic'd up and get the ball rolling. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I promise I won't roam around because I need to be where the mic is. So if you see me and can't hear me, please let me know. I want to give you the sort of where I'm coming from all this. I'm a scientist, entrepreneur myself. I have patents. I started my own company. We raised venture capital, so I feel the pain of all of this when you're going through it. And so our goal in the Innovation Institute is to try to make this as easy as possible. And what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about some of the services we offer to faculty and students, as well as tell you a little bit about the history of technology transfer and how this whole field in commercialization came about. We all know that research funding is very important in academia, and most of this research funding, in fact, comes from the federal government, about 60% in 2012 when the data was available. 6 agencies provide most of this support. And what's interesting is the rising support that almost doubled over the period of time that institutions themselves put into the research enterprise, while that put in by the business community remains relatively flat. And so since so much comes from the federal government, it makes sense that that was going to be the primary driver of how this commercialization was potentially going to take place. But prior to 1980, in 1979, what they found was that research funding rose dramatically. The amount and type and quality of research that federal funding supported increased dramatically, but there wasn't a lot of movement of that technology from inside of the institutions to outside. And in 1979, the government filed over 28,000 patents to that point, but only 5% got licensed. And one of the reasons for this was the fact that the federal government owned this technology, and the federal government alone was responsible for its commercialization. And so Birch Bayh, together with Bob Dole, got together and really understood that if you could take a more distributed model, you can really reach the expectation that society, having funded much of this research, and the taxpayers specifically, they have the right to expect that they're going to derive some benefit. Some of that benefit is the advancement of knowledge, some of that benefit is basic science research, but some of that benefit is actually translating that work into products. And Niels Reimers, who would be eventually the co-founder of a group called AUTUM, the Association of University Technology Managers, people who do what I do at other institutions, coined this phrase when he was working with Birch Bayh and Bob Dole to develop something called the Bayh-Dole Act. And what the Bayh-Dole Act was a fundamental shift that allowed not-for-profit institutions who were the recipients of federal grants to elect title and take those inventions and try to commercialize them. Okay? With that comes a lot of responsibility. The responsibility is you have to diligently commercialize. You have to share proceeds back with the faculty member. You have to report back to the federal government on those things that you're doing. And given the early stage that this research existed, you had to catalyze private investment in these technologies, and the thought was if you have thousands of people doing this work all over the country and all over the world, you could potentially have more successes, more things getting out the door. And just one metric that we look at that can potentially show that is this graph here, which is the contribution of academic research to drug development. So if you take a look at the arrow, the black arrow is when the Bayh-Dole Act went into effect. On one side of the arrow are tens of years. On the other side of the arrow are single years. And on the Bayh-Dole Act alone, on having universities, research enterprises, academic hospitals doing this work, the amount and number of drugs approved that had their basis in academic research increased dramatically. And this whole field was born in about 1980, although there's some places that have been doing it longer. The longest was a group called WARF, the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, which started their tech transfer operation in about 1929. Stanford was right behind them. Later on, as IT was becoming more popular, but technology transfer as a field really got started in 1980. And when we're talking about technology transfer, obviously the best technology transfer we do is our students, is getting our students out there and working in companies, working in the public and private sectors. However, as we're going to talk about it, what we're talking about is technology commercialization, the movement of ideas inside through outside, which is primarily done through either new company formation or licensing of that technology to existing companies. If we take a look at data from 2014, the last year it was available, and this comes from the Autumn survey, what we see is, again, about $60 billion worth of research and about $40 billion of that federally funded. Of that, in a single year, from academic institutions only, we had 6,300 patents, had 5,400 licenses, almost 1,000 new products made it to the market, and almost 1,000 new startup companies were launched as a result of that activity in a single year. But if you take a look at this, why do academic institutions do technology transfer? Well, it's part of our service mission. It's part of what we talked about, that responsibility we have to ensure that technology gets out there to help people. It's for dissemination of new knowledge. It's for economic development. People point to Pitt, CMU, UPMC as being drivers of the resurgence of the economy here in Pittsburgh. It's for education, experiential learning. And there is the drive to make money at this. You're not doing it because you want to lose money, but it's not the number one driver. So if you take a look at the pie chart, what the pie chart is the number of licenses that were looked at this period of time, which is about 27,000, and only 167 made more than $1 million over their lifetime. And if we take the most recent data we have, which comes from Stanford, who's been at this almost the longest, and these data were since 1970, only 3 out of 11,000 inventions are ever going to be a big winner. Granted, for Stanford, one of those was Google. And 88 over the period of time generated $1 million or more. So academic institutions most lose money at this, but it's for other reasons, not necessarily just for the amount of funding. Any money we bring in, that money goes back to the faculty members, goes back to the university, goes back to other parts to support research on campus and bolster the research enterprise as well. So what Pitt wanted to do was really maximize their impact on this commercialization, both products to consumers and cures to patients. Wanted to be better at how it did startup company formations and how we'd measure those successes. It wanted to allow for experiential learning for students who wanted to be part of existing businesses. Wanted to ensure that the regional economic development ecosystem was supported and do our part over and above just existing as an institution and doing our research, do our part for economic development in the region of Southwest Pennsylvania. So it led to the formation of something called the University of Pittsburgh Innovation Institute. Really was looked at by the former provost Jim Marr, who was charged in 2012 with coming up some recommendations to take a look at these areas of innovation, entrepreneurship, technology commercialization, things that we could get together and march under a single umbrella. Innovation Institute itself was formed out of that work as one part of the report that Jim had. And we got formally started in November of 2013 from the combination of 3 separate offices. The Office of Technology Management, which was the Tech Transfer Office. The Office of Enterprise Development, which came out of the health sciences. It was originally the Limbach Entrepreneurial Center associated with the Cancer Institute and evolved over time to be a business development and startup formation office on the health sciences side. And all that would be rolled together with the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence, which started here in the business school, and which is really an outwardly facing regional economic development group that helps both technology-based and non-technology-based companies. All those were put together. I got my job in 2015, and starting July 1, we're set to operate against a new strategic plan that we've put together for the next 5 years. And it's to build upon this foundation with some additional programs and projects and services I'll tell you about. So our 4 areas that we work on are innovation commercialization, and that's how technologies get from the inside of the university to out, and that's licensing to companies, that's starting new companies. So startup company development is important to us. We've also added programs on student entrepreneurship. both how do we teach students to be entrepreneurs from a practical standpoint. So students who want to run their own businesses, how do we help them run their own businesses? Our partnership with the business school, both on the CBA and the Katz side, is they're getting the education they need. We help them start and run their businesses from a practical standpoint. And entrepreneurial assistance, tell you a little bit more about what the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence is doing to support the regional ecosystem. So our mission is to create, support, and sustain a culture and environment of innovation, entrepreneurship, and collaboration on campus and off for the benefit of us all, including the benefit of society. If we take a look at our numbers at a glance from 2015, we'll see that we looked at about 300 different technologies from the commercialization side. We had almost 70 patents issued, did over 100 licenses. We started 11 companies from Pitt Technology, and then the students we assisted started another 10 companies themselves based upon things we did in an effort we call Blast Furnace. So the university started 21 companies from that aspect, and to date we have about 125 new companies that have been started from Pitt Technology, if we take a look at the ones we've done this year. We'll roll up our numbers and report out 2016, probably the second week of July. On the other side of the coin is everything we're doing for the regional entrepreneurs, which included helping them start 90 businesses, restaurants, dry cleaners, pizza shops, jewelry stores, and a lot of these in underserved and underrepresented neighborhoods and underrepresented groups who are becoming part of the process. The Entrepreneurial Fellows Program is for businesses that have over $1 million that are looking to increase their revenue, and everything and all programs served over or almost 1,000 different companies and develop the ties of those companies with the university. And what we'll talk about is some of the ways that the technology-based side, the commercialization side, is interacting with the regional economic development side in a way that I hope makes sense to everyone. So with respect to technology commercialization, this is the pathway that it looks, and it doesn't look very much different at any other university. And it's really taking the research that's disclosed to us in some form or fashion and having it evaluated. Here it's evaluated by a committee of faculty, and that's called the Technology Transfer Committee, and that's where we decide on its protection. Is this something that we can move forward with, that we reasonably think we're going to license? So we set to answer 3 separate questions. Is it protectable in some form, because that's the asset you're transferring? Is it licensable? Is someone willing to spend their money to develop it from the form that we can give that to them, to the product they'll need to sell to the market? And then is it enforceable? If you are licensing a patent, they're going to want the right to do that exclusively for a period of time, so can you provide them that right? If the answer to all 3 of those is yes, we'll pursue it. For a lot of health tech innovations, patents aren't the right way to go. It may be copyright. It's a business decision to decide how best to protect these type of innovations. So for instance, a patent, if you take a look along the bottom, takes about 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get issued. It takes $40,000 or $50,000 to protect that just in the United States. So you have to understand from a business perspective, does that really make sense? For an app, does that really make sense? For something that is a short product life cycle, does that really make sense? Where copyrights automatically vest when you do the work, you can register them and publish them through the Library of Congress if you're looking to protect them from infringement, but there's nothing else necessary that needs to be done, so that large expense that you have to recoup before you can make any money is somewhat not justified with certain types of health tech innovations. So one of the questions we get is, why aren't you patenting my software? And in a lot of cases, it's really a business decision that you have to make. What are you going to sell? How are you going to sell it? And does it justify the protection that you're going to get from a patent and actually recouping that cost? Sometimes the answer is yes. But in either case, the end result is going to be trying to get people interested in those technologies and eventually licensing them. If we take a look where Pitt fits on all this, this is our 2014-15 numbers and then our roll-up. We've looked at about 3,500 different technologies. Our office got started in 1996. Obviously predates me, but a little later than a lot of other offices got started, and it actually started out of the Office of Research. To date, we've had about 1,300 patents filed. We had about 700 patents issued, 1,200 licenses. Right now, we have about 500 active licensees that we're managing. Number of startups, 115 reported here. We're about 125 right now, if we take a look at this year. And we've just started our student program, so we only have 1 year's worth of data on that. but we were able to help students start 10 companies from that effort. Some of the companies that came out of Pitt Technology are listed here, and they run the gambit. So although a lot of what we do is on the life and health sciences side, we also work on the non-life sciences side as well. Materials, coatings, radio frequency identification devices, things in the energy space. So everything from Tego, which is an RFID company, all the way to Cohera, which makes biomedical adhesives, to Pathview, which actually sets to look at how handicapped individuals can move around a city. All of those started from Pitt Technology, and a lot of those started here in the area. Some of the products that are based upon Pitt research, and it's too hard to put all of them up here, things from diagnostic tests for macular degeneration, to artificial lung, to carbon nanotubes, to peer review software. In the health tech space, some of the things we've commercialized is the diabetes prevention program and its derivatives and how they got access now in an online fashion. We'll talk about Dr. Sufiletto's technology, how that was commercialized as well. And so we run the gambit across the university, and then most of our things have a life or health sciences market to them, even if they're on the non-life sciences side, but about 25% of the things we work on would be considered non-life science. Some of the agreements we have, an existing industry partner, this is GE Healthcare. This is a contrast agent that binds to beta amyloid that they're looking at for an Alzheimer's imaging application. It's called Vizamil. It's been approved in the US and the European Union and is currently being sold by GE. New startup company, Health Stratica, and it was to commercialize Dr. Sufiletto's mobile text technology. Right now they are showing at least Pitt, Duquesne, Towson, and other universities as early adopters of this text message platform. A-Lung, dealing with difference between health tech and a device. A-Lung Technologies had its license back in 2003. They've raised about $95 million to date. They have their CE mark, and only now have they gotten approval for fast track in the United States. And so A-Lung, although they came out of Pitt Technology, are funded by Pittsburgh investors and work here in Pittsburgh, you don't have access to A-Lung technology yet inside the United States. They're actually going through the process and were given expedited approval, raised additional $12 million to do that, and hopefully their extracorporeal CO2 removal device will be accessible to patients here. It's been done at UPMC twice in an emergency situation, which if you heard the story, you wouldn't believe it, which involves Pete DeComo, the CEO of the company, driving over to Canada to pick up one of his own devices and bring it back to the United States. I don't want to know how that conversation with the border guard went, but they're very committed to seeing this get out there and work, and it's right now being sold in about 23 different companies, 23 different countries. So what are the services that we offer in the space of innovation, commercialization, and startup development? I think one of the things that we've done is set up a new process that works on all of our innovations. It's called the Pitt Ventures process. And what it is really an ordered process of how technologies, both those that are going to be licensed to companies, as well as those that are going to be the starting of new companies themselves, how do they work through? Opportunity identification. How do we work through to the next, which is customer discovery? This is built on, for those in the business school, Steve Blank's lean startup model. And so a lot of what we do is take that and tailor it to life sciences. But it's, what does your customer want from a particular technology? Nothing is less desirable to a faculty member than when you tell them you have to call 40 customers and ask them whether or not they want to use your technology. In some cases, just getting out of the building, as it's called, is necessary to determine, is there a market for the technology you have, or is there a tweak in the market that could potentially make it more useful and more easily commercialized? After that, then develop a business model for those things that are actually moving through to become companies, all the way through to interacting and working with existing regional economic development groups. We can only take things so far. At some point in time, once the company's formed, once we do a license to that technology, it has to get outside the institution. And so what are the support systems that are available to it? And we'll talk about some of those with respect to our regional economic development partners. We've only had this in place now for a couple of years, but the gears, as we consider them, are really have really had good results for us. So we've had 92 projects go through that represent 30 different departments on campus. We've had 10 new companies come out of that, 1 license to an existing company, and 3 options for looking at the technology. We've also, through this process, been able, through state support, federal support, and other support from local foundations, to get about $4 million worth of gap funding into these technologies as well. And Chancellor Gallagher committed another $1 million worth of universities funding for gap funding. And what we're talking about is gap funding is that which is necessary to take the technology from where it exists today to something that could be of interest to a potential licensee. So in these cases, it may be prototype development. It may be contracting with some software engineers to take an idea or to take what you have at this particular stage and get it to the point where it, quote unquote, shows. It's something that looks like an alpha or beta level product. And a lot of that gap funding goes actually to that. We've licensed multiple technologies to UPMC as part of our new alliance we'll talk about, and you'll hear more from Dr. Bisich later on. We have right now 15 executives and residents who work with us. They're everywhere from full-time to 1 or 2 days a week, and these are people who actually are here in the region and in some cases outside the region. So we have an executive in residence in software who's actually in the Silicon Valley. The person we're in the process of bringing on right now is an investor in residence. She's been a good friend of the university. She's a trustee over at CMU. Her name is Jean Cunicelli, who is with Bay City Capital. She's gotten out of the business of venture investing to deal with some family issues, but she's going to be working with us 2 days a week to be our investor in residence. One day working with the faculty to try to position their things to look interesting to venture capital, and then the other days trying to make those connections for us about how can we get venture capital to come here to Pittsburgh. With respect to life sciences, there is no, and I mean zero, life science venture capital that is currently investing here in Pittsburgh, with the exception of a small fund called Accelerator 2 out of the Life Sciences Greenhouse. So what we have to do is make sure that new investment firms are coming here to Pittsburgh, that they're looking at us, that they're looking at CMU, looking at our regional strengths. We want them to see Pittsburgh as a place to invest, and a lot of what we're doing in terms of this investor in residence is trying to get them to do that. We have, right now, because it's summer, we've lost some of our interns, but we typically have about 40 student interns working everywhere from doing market analysis all the way to working with potential companies in our GEAR program. So everything that goes through the GEAR program has a team associated with it, which includes, in many cases, a business student, the scientific lead, and then one of our executives in residence. And we are very fortunate to have a lot of support in this community. So people who give of their time, we have over 100 different business mentors who want to give of their time to the university to help us in this effort. And this is completely uncompensated, everywhere from being part of those commercialization teams to judging contests to spending time with our faculty. Business mentors are very important to us. From a student projects perspective, we still use the same GEAR program. We call it Blast Furnace, we'll talk about. We've had 33 student teams through that led to 10 companies, and we have 80 students. And our graduates go to all of the regional economic development groups. In fact, the CEOs of the regional economic development groups are actually on the board of Blast Furnace, so they see these things at a very early stage. In terms of the connection between the regional economic development portion and the technology commercialization portion, this is one area here in the regional companies area where they come together. So I told you about Pitt Ventures. Pitt Ventures led us to a grant from the National Science Foundation, which is I-Corps, which we'll talk about in a second, Innovation Corps. We were able to take that and tailor that and won a grant that goes, it's called Main Street Commercialization. So it's taking the same technology we apply, or the same process we apply to technology-based businesses, and allow us to apply those to businesses looking how to position their product in the market in the non-technology space. So we just got a grant in that, and that's going to the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence, based upon sort of the coordination of all this coming together in the Innovation Institute. We're also taking the GEAR program and working with a partner. Everything we do is in partnership, and everything that we do, whether on campus or off, has very important partners, and if I forget to mention those, I apologize in advance. But one we wanted to bring up here is our work with Tsinghua University in China. The whole goal is to allow us to commercialize our technologies in Asian markets, allow them to work and commercialize here, but the ultimate goal is actually to bring Chinese venture capital back here to Pittsburgh to invest in our companies. We have a demo day over there in July where we're taking 2 of our companies over there to present in Beijing along with their companies, and they're going to be here associated with our science 2016 effort in October. So a great relationship with Tsinghua University. The Innovation Corps is really out of the National Science Foundation, which was an effort to try to get some of these technologies to market as well as educate faculty who want to participate in commercialization. It originally started that they could only work on, the money only worked for NSF-funded inventions, but that since has changed. And so now it's available to all. And what it is a process that provides a small amount of gap funding to allow for customer discovery and allow for that lean startup model to have an impact on technologies, to build the foundation of I-Core site working to give a small amount of money to an I-Core node working to give up to $50,000 to $100,000, all the way to generating enough gap funding to allow this to eventually go out as its own company or be licensed as its own opportunity. So right now under this we have 3 years worth of funding for $100,000 a year. And we have to do 30 teams. We've done 3 cohorts per academic year getting this started. So these types of services are available, and what they'll take you through is how to look at your opportunity, determine if there's a product there. If there is a product, do you have a business there? And if you have a business, is that business likely to attract some external funding? And the I-Core is a good way to go through that. You can go through that with your graduate students. You can go through that with your postdocs. And go through it just yourself, but it's a great program. So on the student entrepreneurship side, we've developed a lot of things, some based on the Pitt Ventures program, but some were new experiments for us that we were trying over the past year or so. One of those experiments was the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Living and Learning Community. This is in Sutherland Hall. We do this with CBA. We do this with Arts and Sciences, and we do this with engineering. 40 students who were part of it. We just got done. They just moved out. What a great group of kids. And what we've always had trouble with was trying to access those who want to be entrepreneurs at the earliest level. You'd see them in a senior design course for engineering. You'd get them later in their career, and by the time they wanted to start something, they'd then have to choose between working for Westinghouse or starting their own company. Now you're showing them that there are other alternatives for those right-minded people in the innovation and entrepreneurship space, and this has really done well for us. So well, we're going to do it again next year, and then explore how we move this from freshman all the way through in undergraduate. So great partnership there. We also host events in partnerships, everything from She Innovates, which we do with the Computer Science Department, which is an all-female hackathon, through startup weekends, through art challenges and art cups that we offer. So associated with Science 2016, we have the Wells Healthcare Entrepreneurship Competition. We have the Kaczynski Cup, which is on the non-life sciences side. And our biggest competition, which is the Randall Family Big Idea Competition, we just got done in April, and it really happens over 10 weeks. And there's over $100,000 in cash awards we give to student teams. And when we talk about students, we mean everyone's from undergraduates all the way up to postdocs. We had 75 student teams, 36 made it to the final round. 250 students were a part of it. 14 out of the 16 schools on campus were represented by a student team who went through Randall. We also try to get underrepresented groups, people of color, females. So we're about 60-40 male to female and about 65-35 with respect to undergraduate versus graduate students. So the undergraduates are really competing with the graduate students in this case. And one of the undergraduates actually won the competition with something which is an oxygen. If you take a look at a soda can, it's an oxygen a storage device that can be used to deliver oxygen for about an hour's period of time when people who need oxygen are in transit. We sent them to the ACC business plan competition. They didn't win, but they had a great experience in doing that. And so they were an undergraduate team who's competing with graduate students. Our blast furnace accelerator, everything is meant to be in sequence to allow people to go, students in this case, to go through our program sequentially. So those who went in Randall go into blast furnace. And what it is a combination of mentoring, networking, training, as well as a physical space in Webster Hall for any student who wants to run or operate a student-run business. They go through the GEAR program, and once they graduate from the blast furnace, they can have access to that space as long as they want to start and run their company. I think the real interesting thing with this and the real goal of this is to get them out. is to have them and help them as long as we can help them, and then allow them to get into groups like Thrill Mill, Alpha Lab Gear, Idea Foundry, and for those who could become their own companies right then. And I think the thing that we are most proud of is, of the student teams who go through Blast Furnace, there's about a 1/3 hit rate of getting them into local business accelerators, which is about double anyone else. And so we're really preparing them to compete with a really crowded field out there, because if you take a look at us in Carnegie Mellon, how many different companies go out with these students every year, it's huge. So we're trying to give them the best leg up to get their best chance at running a student-run business. And one of the sort of, I'd say poster children, because I can really say poster children because he's actually on a billboard down by Duquesne, is Noah Snyder. And Noah Snyder had an idea, which was a coating that he would put on a medical device to prevent biofilm formation and prevent infection. So with that idea, they went to the Culture Program and were funded by the Culture Program. He then participated in our startup weekend, took our coursework. He then participated in our competitions, the Wells Healthcare Competition, and won the healthcare competition. Then did the Randall Family Idea and won the Randall Family Idea. We can't put anything in front of this kid that he doesn't win. He got into Blast Furnace, and what he realized is that the medical application for the technology was going to take too long to get to market and be too expensive to be his first product. So what Blast Furnace said was, where else can you use this coating? What it turns out is this coating works exceptionally well if you spray boats on it, with it, at not accumulating barnacles or not accumulating zebra mussels. And that is what went through Alpha Lab Gear, while the CTSI, Clinical Translational Science Institute, through Pinch, funded the medical application. The non-medical application is now out in a business called Interphase Materials. They're over in the Alpha Lab Gear site, and we're actually negotiating with them to go into our new innovation labs that are part of the Energy Innovation Center. And so anything that we throw at Noah, he's doing so well. Most important thing is he's raised almost $500,000 of completely non-dilutive funding, all by winning competitions and by going through these gap funding exercises. So he's doing real well, and we'll keep our eye on Interphase Materials. On the entrepreneurial assistance side, again, what we're talking about is most of the things that grew out of the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. They were around for over 20 years. And over that time, assisted more than 15,000 entrepreneurs, 7,000 jobs, and created 800 new companies, most of those in the non-technology space. They work with about 1,000 different businesses annually. And what this does is not only help those businesses, but provide us an opportunity to connect those businesses with the university. So for instance, last year what we started was something called Doing Business with Pitt. If you're a small business, let's say you sell office furniture. If you're a small business in the region, you sell office furniture, trying to get into Pitt's purchasing system is a nightmare. And so what we did was we said, okay, we'll get 20 of these businesses together and host purchasing that's going to tell you exactly how you get on the approved vendors list, how you do business with the university. So instead of 20, we had almost 120 people show up for this, different businesses that were really interested how you work with the university, because it's not easy. Oh, it's not easy for us when we're doing purchasing from the outside. Imagine them trying to doing purchasing from the outside in. And so programs like that tie the outside business community, including programs that allow our students on campus to be interns in these businesses. So as you know, the undergraduates have a guaranteed internship opportunity. Some of those internships that we provide them are at some of these businesses that come out of the work that's done at the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. It's our Small Business Development Center site. We have an SBA grant, and so all the SBDC, Small Business Development Center activities, including free consulting, including access to debt type of financing or loans, all goes through this group as well. Entrepreneurial Fellow Center is for businesses that actually generate revenue. Most of the businesses that require FDA approval by the time they're acquired or potentially go to IPO will never generate a dime of revenue, but these businesses do. And for businesses that are over $1 million in revenue a year, we help them by putting them together in a cohort of 30 to 35 of them and take them through coursework in how to build your market, how to build a sales channel, those types of things to grow their revenue from $1 million and on. We're also interested in urban and community entrepreneurship, underserved neighborhoods, underrepresented groups. And we used community because I didn't want to, people are thinking inside Pittsburgh, but in many cases we'll be in Washington County, Greene County, Fayette County, working with disadvantaged areas that may have been disadvantaged from steel loss, may have been disadvantaged from coal loss. And so we actually have outposts in each of those counties that allows for this type of programming to be delivered there as well. We do have a group there who works with technology-based businesses, but those are businesses that have existing products, and they're trying to innovate around those products to bring them to new markets. And they actually use our executives and residence corps on the technology side to provide them with a lot of their consulting and expertise. So the Innovation Institute tries as much as possible to be a resource for everything that's involved in technology commercialization, but really it's all about partnerships. We don't, although this has us at the center, we by no means are at the center. We want to be connectors. We want to work with all the groups on campus that are funding research, that are funding commercialization type research. We want to be able to connect those and connect those innovators with the people outside who are going to take those companies, who are going to fund those companies. Some of the partnerships we have, this is the Discovered and Developed in PA partnership. It was a $600,000 award to Duquesne, Carnegie Mellon, and us. And what it was to do was get a group of us together and deploy gap funding on all 3 campuses. So every bit of that $600,000 was spent in gap funding in researchers' labs to move their technology along the commercialization pathway. We had Innovation Works at the table as the sort of fiscal agent, but more importantly, they were there to see these companies at these earlier stages so that they can find the ones that they were interested in and potentially try to find out how to fund them. Other groups, Idea Foundry, they have their Life Sciences Startup Accelerator program, working with them to try to increase this program in funding. It's funded by the McCune Foundation. And really, it's working together with Idea Foundry that leads them into an accelerator that provides up to $25,000 in financing for a new company once it leaves the institution. Very importantly is our commercialization partnerships with UPMC. Both the Pittsburgh Health Data Alliance, which you'll hear a lot more about from Mike Bisich later on this afternoon, which is seed funding and master project funding for things that come out of the Center for Commercialization, Center for Commercial Applications of Healthcare Data. They spend a lot of time going around campus, working with innovators on campus, trying to create cases that would make this interesting running through this particular program. And with both of the programs, that as well as our broader commercialization collaboration, we have predefined business terms and predefined template agreements with UPMC. So part of what we had an issue in the past is how we interact with each other, Pitt and UPMC, how we decide who gets what. And that has, you know, as the Chancellor was talking about, that type of friction is, transactional friction is what you don't need. And I think both of these collaborations sort of decrease that transactional friction. So we have opportunities for seed funding for health tech, all the way through to other types of technologies that are of interest to UPMC enterprises, and you'll hear a little bit about enterprises later on today as well. We also form collaborations with for-profit companies. This is a sports medicine company that has Charlie Batch, former Steeler, as one of the founders of the company, called Impelia. And it's actually licensed our technology, a lot of it in this space. So we have something for diagnosis of ACL injury. We have technology for preventing hospital readmissions that is being tested out and piloted at Children's Hospital. So a lot of the collaborations in sports and rehabilitative medicine, particularly those that have a healthcare IT aspect, we try to send through our partners at Impelia, who start new companies around each of the technologies that they choose to in-license. So if I've left you with nothing else, I hope I've left you with, come to us if we can help you. We have money, we have programs, we have connections with investors, we have connections with potential licensees, and we are starting to execute against a new plan that will bring us even closer to working with the faculty, even better at some of the things we do, even more funded starting the next fiscal year. You can get to us at innovation.pitt.edu. It's our old website until July 1st, but this is a mock-up of what the new one's going to look like. Our poster child, Noah's obviously on the front page. That'll get you to everything you need. What we always have on all of the front pages of our website is the help box. If you have no idea what you need, who you want to talk to, or anything, just click on the help box. Someone will get back to you within 24 hours. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, be happy to answer those. Mark.
Thanks for that nice overview. Sort of curious what you see in your experience in this job is the greatest challenges that you're facing to advance this agenda. Is it available venture money in our environment from less small businesses? Is it rules and regulations at Pitt? Is it investment in innovation allowing you to have more patents? And what do you see as the issues, and how's our trajectory changing in that regard?
Gotcha. And so I'll be keeping you for an extra hour while I go through this. The number one things that prevents technology commercialization right now is the stage at which research leaves and the stage at which investors are willing to invest and pick it up. With consolidation, with changing markets, what you're finding is they want more and more data. They want more and more de-risking before they're willing to put in any money. Those type of funds, as you know, are difficult to come by. And so part of the UPMC collaboration was to provide those funds, to figure out how we can get what we call gap funding into these projects. And so from a number one standpoint, it's the funding to bring them to a point where someone would want to invest in them. With respect to policies, there's real policy issues and there's perceived policy issues. So I guarantee you that probably half of you in this room, if not more, don't think you can be CEOs of your own companies and still work and be professors at Pitt, and that's not true. You can be CEOs of your own company, you can own 100% stock in your company, and still be CEOs at Pitt. So that's a perception one. Real problems that I think we're set to address with the upcoming policy revisions is the way the IP policy currently reads is that Pitt owns the intellectual property of its faculty, staff, and students, full stop. Is that practice? No. What we're doing is carving out areas that belong to the faculty. So for instance, if you're not using any university resources, why should that intellectual property look like it belongs to the university, even though we don't do that? So that's going to be a change. I think student intellectual property. Our practice is that any students taking a for-profit course, regardless of the facilities they're working in, should own their own intellectual property, and that's what we do for them now. So I think tightening up those policies, I think conflicts of interest is always something you have to address, but in my opinion, we should be no more restrictive than the government, than the granting agencies who are giving us our money. So we should be no more restrictive than the NSF or NIH in our conflicts of interest policies. Still protecting patients, because these funding agencies see those as being their baseline standards. Why exclude people from doing things that your funding agencies don't see you have to do unless there's really a good reason to do that? With respect to success of businesses once they get started, we can only get them to a point. And that point is get them out the door. We have trouble getting them financed. The Pittsburgh Life Sciences Greenhouse used to be a good source of regional economic development dollars. The state budget has cut back so much that they don't have those monies anymore. So most of those funding is going through Innovation Works, and most of Innovation Works funding goes into non-life science technologies. So we're having trouble with economic development. At the same time, we're having trouble with venture capital, because unless we attract it to the region, it's not here. We can't go downtown and go to Draper and say, hey, Draper, we have this medical device we'd like you to fund. They're dipping their toes into health tech, but if it has any hint of regulatory approval, they want to stay away from it. So it's assistive things, it's interventions, things that don't have any clinical decision-making associated with them that they're willing to fund because they don't want to take the risk of regulatory approval. So those come together. And as a region, that's what we have to solve if we want to keep these companies here. Because like Cohera Medical, which just left to go to Raleigh, North Carolina, they raised $50 million to do so. In order to grow their business, grow their sales, they had to leave. And so as a region, I think we have to be better at supporting those companies when they're here. But Pitt's biggest challenge is gap funding, and I think with respect to the policies, they'll be tuned to the point that they'll be as productive as possible and not be impediments. Any other questions? I was that clear. Okay, I'll take it. Thank you very much.